welcome to the faculty. In today's faculty, we're going to be looking at a very important topic that has actually affected every home in Nigeria, positively or negatively, depending on the divide you're in. I'm talking about the Joint Admissions and Matriculations Board. The Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, the board and given the responsibility of conducting examinations to tertiary institutions, have officially released the cut-off mark into tertiary institutions this year. And the cut-off mark has been set at 150. To throw more light on discuss on this topic, I have two very wonderful men with me in the studio who are going to be giving us an emphasis and of course taking us through the perspective of what to expect and what it's all about. To my immediate left is a young man and a friend talking about Barrister Sam Ubo, PhD. Dr. Barrister Sam Ubo, PhD. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me today.
And also to the far left, none other person, and Comrade Victor Soruku. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Sheldon.
Yes, Barrister, it's good to have you on this program, and of course, Soruku same with you. Let's look at JAMB has come out after so much wait, after cancellations, after issues relating to public concern. JAMB has officially pronounced 150 after a meeting with all the vice chancellors. They come out 150 as the benchmark for admission. Can you give us an overview of your understanding of what has been on?
Well, that is a good one. 150 as benchmark as cut-off for JAMB 2025-26 admission is not bad. But let me say too that that cutoff is not sacrosanct. I say, you know, if you say that universities have autonomy, it follows that they do things on their own. Now, can JAMB actually control universities? I have seen so many things. They've listed a lot of things to be done for to control. You know, that, let me use the word control, to control universities. But is it really ideal? Because what I know is that universities are autonomous on their own. If universities are autonomous and you are trying to control them, it will not work. It will not go a long way to, you know, helping the situation. Now, let us look at the 150 cutoff mark. Yes. You know, it is the duty of JAMB, just as they have done, to fix a cutoff. Rather, that a student or yes, a candidate who seeks admission has scored 150 mark does not necessarily mean that that will, you know, guarantee him or her admission. No. Now there are courses that the university authority will fix their cutoff. In law, in medicine, mechanical engineering, all those engineering courses, they normally fix their cutoff. And if you don't score up to such a cutoff, you cannot be admitted. I've had some universities have said their cutoff is 200. That anybody that doesn't, any student or candidate that does not score up to 200 will not be offered admission in some universities. There are others that can do that, and that is why you have private universities now. You can gain admission there, but some universities will tell you that, look, we can't offer you admission if you score less than 200, and they will stick by it. So that is why I have said earlier on that I don't know how JAMB is going to control these universities, especially now that we know that the universities have autonomy. They are autonomous. They decide what happens in their universities, and not for JAMB to compel them to admit students. So if any student or any candidate is not offered admission, because he or she has scored up to 150, you know, and he or she is not offered admission, they shouldn't see it as their rights. In fact, there is no law backing up such cutoff.
No law backing up such cutoff.
Yes.
Comrade Soruku, we're looking at the just announced cutoff mark by JAMB, and you heard what Barrister said. Are you in line with that school of thought?
What I would say is,
what's your opinion about
it? It is an action in the right direction. All that is needed or required is to get all stakeholders involved. under the canopy of the Nigeria Universities Commission and other relevant bodies. It should be a joint stakeholders decision, trying to set standard for the citadels of learning is very important. Introducing ranking, it is not just you now scoring, but aggregating it in view of all of the candidates that sat for that exam. So the policy is a welcome development, but all stakeholders should be involved. Every stakeholder should be integrated to be able to come up with a binding, acceptable policy. Apart from 150, the age limit also is in
contention. I think they've settled for 16 years.
16 years, but is it workable with the private institutions? The private schools? The private schools, I do not think they give much consideration to age limit. So a policy that should be binding on all stakeholders should involve all the stakeholders in the education sector, particularly the private sector. The private sector is one area I still see so much of lacuna. The government is yet to work out proper oversight role to ensure that the private sector, adapt to policies from the cradle. I'm not just talking of universities now. Even in the crèche, normally should be 6 years for entry point to school, another 6 years for secondary, primary, and all that. All culminating in the 16 years. Initially, the federal government policy was 18. The JAM now is trying to bring it out to 16. But we have people that the private schools, before you know, they're out of school at the age of 14. So the private school too should be properly integrated into the formulation of these policies, especially with regards to oversight.
Yes, with regards to oversight, that's a good one. Now, coming back to you, but we're looking at critically the pronouncement of JAM, looking at the benchmark. That JAM has said it is 150 general cutoff. They did that in consultation with all the vice chancellors of our institutions. Does that mean, because I think that we heard about post-UNE, does that mean that is the final addendum for that, for admission, vis-a-vis the need for the three of us seated here didn't do post-UNE? And what is the relevance of post-UNE to the present style of admission?
Yes, you can see that the issue of autonomy will still come up, and that is what the universities are trying to, establish, that we are superior to JAM. Now, because it appears the various universities don't even trust JAM, or rather the exam being conducted by JAM. So they want to see to it that, yes, these students or these candidates who have done well or who have not done well should be tested once more. But that notwithstanding, if a candidate scores high in JAM, all those, it is still positive. It will still positively affect his score during the post-UTME test, because the aggregate, when we talk about the aggregate, it encompasses your JAM score, including your O-level results, and the post-UTME score. So all these things put together will, that is how you get the aggregate. Now they actually want to get the best. Who are actually the best candidates out? Or those that scored so high in JAM, did they actually merit it? No, those are some of the things. Now, 150 is not bad. 150 is not bad at all. It is okay. But in some courses, like I said earlier on, what the admission board members and the school authorities normally do is to look at the scores. For example, in faculty of law or faculties of law, what is done there is this. Now you consider the quota given to you by NUC and Council of Legal Education, assuming it is a new university like we have in our state right now, assuming it is a new university where you are given 50 students as quota, you look at those who have performed well. Now there is going to be a merit list. If you have a merit list of 30 candidates, meaning that others can come, from somewhere. And doing that too, you must put a benchmark too. Assuming the best students there, some will score 250 and above. You see many of them score that. Maybe they have up to 1,000 students that apply for law, and you are just going to admit 50 candidates. Now you go for the best. First of all, you look at the scoring. Who are the best 30? You give them admission on merit list, and thereafter you will consider another list, probably among the best. You see this thing, when you see it, what is the workability of 150? Before you get to 150, maybe you have finished your admission, you've gotten your candidates. So these are some of the issues. I am not saying that 150 is not bad. Oftentimes what the schools do too is to move those students or candidates who are unable to meet their cutoff to other departments. Can move some students or candidates who apply for law to other departments like psychology, sociology, criminology, and others. You can take them there, so as to, in order not to rob them of admission. So these are some of the indices that are actually involved in offering these admissions, because there is no how you are going to stop universities from putting their own benchmark.
That's not a problem.
Yes.
Let's look at, from your opening salvo, comrade, you talked about a generational trend, or rather a generational trajectory. Children at this generation going to our institution, going to school younger than our generation. That means at 14 there's a possibility to see somebody that has finished secondary school, and a lot of them writing JAMB. Is this assumption a fair narrative for people in that category? Because parents are pushing their children to write JAMB earlier, go to school, graduate earlier. You see people graduating at 18, 19, and 20. So with the interference, I want to call it an interference in the admission process by JAMB and independent, the so-called autonomous university, who is going to, how does it affect the academic growth of our children?
Yeah. Before I come to the issue of age limit, let me just say something.
Yes, and what is
The
it?
benchmarking. You see, universities have their peculiar academic setting, and what JAMB intends to do is to up the standard of merit, that merit list. My concern is if it will be a blanket binding on all of the schools, because some schools, they will introduce quota system, maybe because of the academically
Or what you call catchment area.
and catchment. And then let us not see a situation where we'll be having double standards. Yes, if it's benchmarked at 150, that means that all of the universities across the federation should operate on that level.
Yeah. It's assumed that the minimum cutoff should be that level, right?
And we hope
They would abide.
they would abide by it. Because sometimes when we talk of this autonomy, there are universities that want to come
Lower than that.
Lower.
Of course.
considering the academic
Yeah, you have a
environment.
point there,
Do you understand? Especially in the
yeah.
north.
On the north.
You know, where they
Exactly.
say, let us lower this so that we can have more people, more students into school. You know, but the whole thing is to give more credence to merit than connections and other considerations. So it should be encouraged, and all stakeholders should work together to ensure that merit, because the standard of education truly is falling, you know, and it is at that level that you can ginger the students to prepare them for higher learning. So the issue of age limit, that is one area I think there should be latitude, because not every child has the same intelligent quotient. There are children that could enter the university at the age of 14. The level of their intelligence. And I know that in the JAMB policy, there is also a caveat for that. You know, special children. But again, parents are also advised not to abuse that. You know, to begin to push their children into school and say, my child is very intelligent. The criteria should be well spread out. You know, but there should be latitude, because our children these days, with exposure to internet, you know, the knowledge is increasing. Every day knowledge is increasing, knowledge is abounding. And at 12, what a child could do with the computer, you know, with the IT. Even a 40-year-old people, you won't be able to do that. So the knowledge, we're in a knowledge generation. So benchmarking it at 16 as a limit should also be reviewed. There should be enough latitude. When you see a child, what else should a child do other than go to school?
Exactly.
So, you know, are you sending the child to farm or to work? It's to school. So if you find a child that is gifted academically, should be allowed to go
Without any restriction.
Without restriction. The age should not be a restriction.
Exactly. Now, talking about age should not be a restriction. If you're just joining us, this is the Faculty Public Affairs Program every weekday on Delta Broadcasting Service Asaba. On today's Faculty, we're looking at a very topical issue. The benchmark of 150 as the cutoff point nationally agreed by Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board in collusion with the Vice Chancellors of universities and higher institutions in Nigeria. And doing justice to that in the studio, throwing more light is Comrade Sam Ugbo, Comrade Victor Soroko, and Dr. Sam Ugbo, PhD. Thanks for being on the program. We're still looking at the issues arising from this program. You made a very valid point when you said that age shouldn't be a barrier towards someone's trajectory. Now let's come to quota system. A lot of times we find out that quota system and catchment area has bedeviled educational trajectory over time. Those of us that wrote common entrance growing up, I remember the cutoff mark for Bendel, Anambra, Imo, and I think Ondo State was quite higher, far higher. And the North, some states had zero cutoff mark. Just if you are putting for federal government college so you are admitted because you showed an interest to go to school. How has quota system and catchment area influenced higher institutional education? I'm referencing this to something, and I want you to get it clear. Some of these guys in my secondary school could not write English, could not speak English in JS1, could not write English. Over time, they were able to manage up to SS3, and they wrote why how they passed, I do not know. But today, two of them are in the House of Representatives, representing Katsina, one Kano State. There's one that is a senator, So many of them are political aides, and one of them is in NNPC as an executive director, somebody, but you can see here Nigeria's issue of photo system and catchment area is playing out. So what is your take on that? That's where I have an issue. Barrister.
Well, over time, catchment area, you know, have been an issue. I remember those days. I don't know if it is still obtainable right now. During our time, where there were no private universities, no much private universities per se, the issue of catchment area was an issue. They will tell you there are states who are highly educationally motivated. There are others who are not educationally motivated. When you talk about some states in the north, like you mentioned, then Bender State, Anambra and others, where your JAMB score, even if you score a very high mark, you cannot be offered admission in some institutions because they say your state. I wonder if those restrictions are still there. Are they still there? That is the question. Probably those are the things that JAMB actually want to, you know, rectify this time around. Maybe they want to abolish, or they have abolished all those things. Maybe there is no issue of catchment area any longer. I think they should come up with a good policy that will eradicate that issue of catchment. If they say we are all Nigerians and that you can live in any part of the country, it follows too that you can school in any part of the country. Why such restrictions? It has, I think it is time they stopped all those restrictions bordering on catchment areas and others. Now, it has actually affected education. There is no two ways about it. It's robbed so many people of their chances of going to school. Then, I don't know what is happening right now. Persons or candidates from Delta State were not offered admission at Ahmadu Bello University. It is not as if you won't be offered admission, but you have to be well connected before you can gain admission to such institutions like Ahmadu Bello University, University of Maiduguri and all that. But it is easier for them to come to University of Nigeria, Nsukka, because as it concerns catchment area, a little score in JAMB will offer them admission then. But for us who are here, we couldn't gain admission there because they say, oh, Bender State or Delta State is a highly educated state. You must score high before you can gain admission there.
Quite unfortunate.
It's very, very unfortunate. That's too unfortunate. I hope that all those things have been abolished and curtailed. If not, the issue of JAMB bringing fixing quota, or what's it called, cut-off, will not in any way
help and yes. Thanks, Samuel. Victor, I'm coming back to you right now. Let's look at the impact of JAMB. I want to reference our time, your time, my time. JAMB was a one-stage exam. You go to university, different schools with a different cutoff. We didn't have JAMB universal cutoff, as the case may be. Now, moving forward, this generation are beginning to see JAMB cutoff, and you go and do post-UME. I want to ask, what is the importance, what impact or what relevance as the benchmark and the especially the post-UME, what has been its impact on the educational sector, especially in the higher institution? How has it affected our children?
Okay, you see, it flows from Doc's argument. You see, when there are different parameters for admitting students from different states, you begin to see agitations. In fact, that was what gave vent to institutions wanting to have their internal evaluation process. You know, they began to seek autonomy. And that is also why you begin to see proliferation of universities. You know, Delta State today, we have
Almost.
about 4 universities,
I call them higher institutions. We have about 9 higher institutions.
9 higher institutions.
Government
you know,
owned. We're talking of government owned. We're not
state
talking of
government
we're
owned.
not talking if you add the
Universities.
private.
You understand? So the proliferation is as a result of these issues of catchment, issues of disadvantage, issues of high and low educational states. So states now are now building universities for their people, especially those that are high. You understand? So that their people can go to school. You cannot be denying a state just because you feel their intelligence quotient is high. Meanwhile, those with low quotient are gaining admission
And becoming NMPC executive directors.
just like you were
Becoming
complaining.
heads of conglomerates.
Somebody will finish secondary school and you stay 5 years, you are not admitted. There was a time it was so. You understand? So, but with the universities, more universities, the autonomy that universities have, they are able to admit according to their own environmental peculiarities. Yes, we also understand that there are political inclinations to admission, you know, connection and all that. But if you watch carefully, it has also helped to ease non-admission because there's on their right, you say, okay, we want to up
Yeah, cutoff.
our cutoff to 155, but certainly not below 150.
I'm sure my understanding of 150 benchmark is this. That it's exactly like you just said, not below 150.
Yes, the minimum.
You might have minimum law.
Minimum
Law
standard.
could go for 220. Medicine could go for 250.
Sociology can go for
Sociology can 151.
But
Psychology 151.
no course
Low others-
of study should
yeah,
go below 150. That is the benchmark.
That is the benchmark. Quite an interesting experience.
Apart from nursing,
Apart from nursing, nursing goes for what?
140.
Those are school of
140.
nursing, not the university.
Not university.
Like
no, universities are doing nursing too.
Yeah, you said because of
College
lack
of education
of,
is 100.
lack of
polytechnic-
nurses and other
But
medical
now-
experts in the country. I
Okay,
think they
that's
want
what
to
the
boost it, and
boost
because
the
of that, they
nursing
reduce
profession.
the
The
cutoff for nursing so that
So presently,
Yeah,
what you are telling me is that nursing, the cutoff for nursing for admission is 140.
yeah,
Now,
at least.
Now we're looking at we've been looking at admission, and you made a statement that tickled my fancy. You talked about proliferation of universities and higher institutions. All the governments and their progs are concerned about is building of new universities. Politicians want universities to be cited in their towns, in their communities. They want to gain, they want to use it as a campaign tool that I brought university. Nobody's talking about jobs. We're talking about churning on graduates. Let's look at, is there a reciprocal equivalent job availability for the number of graduates that we're churning, and why? What is fundamental problem? Because entrepreneurship is no more. We're not talking about creating craftsmen anymore. We're talking about creating jobs post-university education. So what can be done about that?
Yeah. Let me say one thing very categorically. Education should not be the principal determinant for job creation. It is for self-development and to even make you a creator of jobs. The first thing a society needs is an enlightened people. We don't just go to school to have a certificate to look for jobs. We go to school to develop ourselves, to even become employers of labor. What we expect of government is to create an enabling environment, provide schemes that will help us actualize our aspirations. Not everybody should be a civil servant. Education helps us to develop our potentials, our skills, our inequalities for societal development. Education becomes very important, to broaden our reasoning. But what we often see is people feel they go to school to get a certificate to look for jobs.
Exactly.
That mentality, that orientation should change. And also, we should begin to think of technical education, vocational education, education that equips you,
or prepares you.
that prepares you and equip you.
Yeah.
That when you are coming out of school, you are hands on a job. You are hands on.
And you could even be creating jobs too.
You be creating.
Labor.
Not just an education for certificate, but like the late Chimitebele would say, the certificate.
Yes, that is it. The
An
certificate.
education that confers on you the know-how to do things. There's so much grounds that are yet to be broken. Fallow grounds in technology. In fact, our world, Nigeria and Africa, there's so much grounds to break up. So if all we go to school to do is to come out with a certificate and be looking for an establishment that we want to work, there's so much of our potentials that are dormant. So education should open it up for us to now begin to think of what to do to better ourselves and better the society.
Barrister, let's get what you know about.
Well, just like you said, education is to prepare our mind towards establishing ourselves and other persons around us. It is not really a certificate per se. I think times have changed. There should be a paradigm shift from where we were to somewhere, because the country, or rather things have actually changed, and anybody that relies on certificate, will have him or herself to blame. I think government too should do something about it. There are so many people who would have loved to establish, but the finance with which to do that is not available. And that is how you see our young men and women go into what we call internet, fraud. Unfortunately, even some of them who were able to make some money, could not establish. They don't know that they can establish. You can open a business. You can have what do they call it? Sachet water, pure water business, and bottled water. That is a good
That's
business.
where education comes in.
Yeah. If you don't have that education, actually,
You have money.
you will have that instinct to think. It gives you that that instinct to think about what to do. Some persons have money, but they don't know what to do. Another problem is the issue of politics and politicians. I think government should do something about this. The type of money, the kind of money politicians make now deters a lot of young people from going to school. They believe that school is calm. Now you have gone to school, nothing. The man out there that did not go to school has money more than you. He's more respected. He contests the election and goes to House of Assembly, House of Rep. And you, who is a professor, who is a PhD holder, you still go to them to get money to buy tire for your car if you have. The other time I was at Agbo, I saw a professor. This professor taught me more than 20 years ago when I was in the university. He was on bike. Man, I was driving. I drove close to the bike and I said, please stop. So let me carry my professor. He taught me more than 20 years ago when I was in the university. He still goes by bike. A very senior professor. Now, you see that a counselor, an ordinary counselor has a car.
Yes.
And the professor is likely not to have, even if he has, probably he does not have money to buy fuel for his car. And that is the type of country or society we are. It is just too unfortunate. And this is actually, deterring younger ones from going to school. Now, what are you going to school for? No job. Even when you intend to establish for yourself, the capital is not there to do that.
Yeah.
Government policies are not favorable to you. Even if they have such policies, the politicians hijack it and give it to their, to their friends and well-wishers. So where do we belong in the society? It is really a serious issue that has to be tackled. Government should do something about all these issues for us to move forward.
Do something about all these issues. Yes, let's get the opinions. We're looking at it critically. So what do you think? I want to make some comparisons. Admission process in like the UK, for example, whom we copy the educational system from, and Nigeria. There's no evaluation body that conducts a nationally agreed version of JAM examination for the admissions in the UK. The higher institutions are truly autonomous. Why can't we use that template in Nigeria for true autonomy? Because I've seen pronouncements of autonomy on so many fronts, but never realistically been practiced. Why can't it be? Why is it not practicable in our climate?
Yeah. Virtually all the systems in the third world are evolving.
The evolution is slow.
Everything and the evolution is so slow. In everything, in governance, in technology, in economy, in education, everything is the slow-paced evolution. And that is the problem. What we have, the bane of the third world is visionary leadership. A leadership that makes things work. In all sectors, in all spheres. Doctor is just talking about the mentality of those in power, those in government, those that are in control of resources. When resources are channeled to the proper places, the society will evolve faster. Will evolve faster.
Yes.
When you talk of education, you talk of health, you're just talking of the UK. You don't have a unified exam control body. They have their different exam control. If you go to, because the government sets a standard, there is a policy that everybody must follow. And then as long as you follow that policy, if you don't follow that policy, the law catches up with you. Even the law in Nigeria is also suspect. Policy, suspect. Leadership, suspect. Everything is suspect. And this is where we begin to address our minds to talking to ourselves to get the right kind of leadership. A leadership that make things work. That will put square pegs in square hole. Do the right thing. And then we'll have a system that is good.
And then we have a system that is going. You talked about as we're rounding up, you talked about every policy in third world countries moving at a very slow pace. But I want to differ on one. Every policy but one. Corruption. Corruption is moving faster
Corruption is not a policy.
You know,
It's a lifestyle.
It's a life. That is it. It became from
a lifestyle.
supposedly
It's
becoming a
it's been a
policy.
crime.
It has but then it's the fastest.
criminal lifestyle.
It is the fastest growing business in third world countries among leadership, among the political elite. All they are concerned is still
And it
economic.
erodes establishing structures that will make the society work.
Yes.
Corruption erodes it.
Quite unfortunate. I think we've really had a very incisive and, of course, great program this afternoon. It's been the issue of the JAMB cutoff mark as it affects admission for our children into our institutions in Nigeria. About two panelists with me in the studio, Dr. Barrister Sam Igbo, PhD. Thanks for coming on the program. It's
You're
always a
welcome.
pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And of course, Comrade Victor Soroku, the unionist. I would have tackled him on union issues, but today we're discussing admission. So thanks for coming on the program. Yes, to our viewers, it's been a very wonderful afternoon. I want to appreciate your time with us. Make sure you do the same tomorrow. Good afternoon.